welcome to the show. I'm your host, Joy Harrington. Today we have a special guest on. Ash McDonald has become a friend of mine, actually, because our husbands knew each other first, and they were like, you guys need to meet. And it was the most beautiful, unexpected friendship. I feel like I could talk to this girl for hours, but I want you to hear from her because she is a bomb coach, and she talks a lot about feminine synergy in working with your cycle and working with yourself as a woman. So let me give you a little bit about her. She is a therapist turned holistic business coach, mom of 3, and cyclical planning expert who believes your success is a direct result of how well you honor your body's needs as a woman, because the business of you is just as important as the business you're running. Amazing. I don't think I could even say it better. So with that being said, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
And she has a podcast that'll be coming soon in October. So we'll for sure plug that too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I didn't even realize you were a therapist before, but that's cool. So tell us a little bit about you. Who is Ashley McDonald? How do you have this business and this life and all the things?
Oh man, at this point, I'm in my mid-30s. I feel like I've lived 100 lives, all different versions of this life, especially with 3 kids under the age of 7. I tell you what, but yes, I'm a trained therapist. I went to school to become a therapist. I have a master's in counseling psychology and a master's in sociology. And my first business was actually a private practice that I opened in Denver, Colorado. And I loved it. I loved it. And then I had my first baby, and I realized what it was like to own a brick and mortar business that you still had to pay for when you had maternity leave. And I got that strong dose of, holy crap, motherhood is hard, and I don't want to go back to work, and I'm paying all this overhead and all the things. And so we kind of went through this series of events after that. One was me officially closing down my private practice. 2 was me going into community mental health full time. So driving away from my 6-month-old baby, pumping while I drove, seeing 40 clients a week, which felt incredibly unethical, pumping in between, taking notes, all the things that I had to do. But also starting my first network marketing business because I was so dang determined to be able to be home with my kiddo. And so I have about 9-year history in network marketing. And so about 3 months after I went back to work full time, I actually replaced my full-time income in network marketing, which was amazing, and did it very, very hustle mode, very grind, very I have no choice. I've got to be home with this baby that I made. And my husband and I were faced with this, okay, so what do we do with this? We've got this freedom now. We've got this income. So we actually sold everything we owned, moved into an RV full-time, traveled the country with our little one. And then long story short, had another one in North Carolina, made our way back home, all while building these network marketing businesses, but having this deep desire to get back to my roots as a therapist. And my kind of that rock bottom, right? So throughout lots of pregnancies, lots of babies. I actually had 3 miscarriages in between my first and second. So I had 6 pregnancies all in the span of about, feels like 6 years maybe. It was just so fast, so much pregnancy, so much nursing, so many, all the things. I was pregnant with my 3rd, my baby girl, and I hit just an all-time low. I'm lost. I don't know what to do. I'm not really into this life that I'm living right now. And my burnout, it had been too many bouts of in and out of burnout. And I remember telling friends, telling family, I'm not well. I'm not well. I don't feel good. Things are not right. Something's wrong. Even as a trained therapist, I'm mentally, there's a concern here. Something's up. And I remember my friends and people saying, it's just your hormones. It's just your hormones, this casual, it's just your hormones. Don't worry about it. It's just your hormones. And at some point I basically said, no, I refuse that. I refuse to take this as just this is how I am and this is how I should be. And so kind of as a research nerd, I went all in on learning everything there is to learn about the female body and our hormones and how they impact our mental health and how the hormones that course through our body actually play a very intricate role in how our brain operates and how our emotions respond and how our relationships are impacted. And I took this therapy love that I have and I combined it with hormone education and expertise. And I learned all about cycle syncing, which I'm sure you've talked about on this podcast before. And it changed everything. And so I dove into what I am now. So that was, 3.5, 4 years ago, which is a holistic business coach, because I believe that we have to look at every aspect, every area of our lives. I wouldn't have made it. I wouldn't have made it as a mom, as a business owner, as a wife, in any of those areas. I mean, I was really facing suicidal ideation and so much hardship. And I was set free by the information of how my body works to know I'm not broken. I don't need fixing. I also don't need to accept this. And there's ways that I can harness these beautiful hormones, this superpower of being a woman, to have the best life that I deserve.
I resonate so much with that. You know my story, that I've experienced burnout myself, and I have Hashimoto's. So I've definitely experienced the whole, like, what's wrong with me? Something's wrong with me. And getting to that point of saying, I'm not going to accept this anymore. I'm not going to live this way anymore. Yeah. And I think women might not even know what they can ask for.
No.
I don't know if you run across this with clients, but I think so many people are walking around in a certain state of being, not just in their health, but in their life overall, accepting what they have because they think they have no other choice.
Oh, yeah. Or just pushing through, like feeling that. I hear it all the times from my clients of just like, if I can just get this to-do list done, if I could just get this thing done, then I'll feel ease, then I'll feel energy, then I'll feel like this revival of my soul, as opposed to looking inward, right? We're just externally trying to check as many boxes as we can, i.e. running ourselves directly into the burnout wall that's right in front of us.
And I see that translate a lot, actually, even into business, where women think, if I do this, once I do that, then I'll be able to have clients.
Yeah,
to me, totally. It's a backwards way of thinking, because that says that you're needing to do in order to be worth helping people. Do you see that translate even with the women you work with? Because I know you work a lot with women with their health and their cycles. And do you see that across the board for them when they come in and they're like, oh, I've been accepting this in my health, they're also accepting things and everything else?
Oh my gosh, 100%. Yes. Because essentially the way that I work with people is I teach them about cycle syncing, which leads them into my mastermind, which is what teaches women how to tap into their intuition, how to cultivate that feminine synergy, how to biohack their business through the lens of how their body operates, as opposed to, the external, right? Which is all, that's why that like mindset piece, like being a therapist, I understand that the stories we tell ourselves, the beliefs that we carry, they become our reality. They dictate how we see the world. But the problem is that when our energy is affecting our energy and our hormones are affecting our energy and our productivity, we're not thinking, oh gosh, well, that's that progesterone that's coursing through my body right now, or that's that insurgence of this or that, or whatever the case may be. We're thinking, I am broken. I can't do what she can do. Right? Wow, she looks so alive and vibrant on her stories, and I can't show up that way. Well, sister friend, you're in a completely different phase. You're in a completely different part of your world, meaning you're not meant to. You have a different superpower to harness right now. And I think, yes, it translates to every single area, where ultimately, I always tell women, I think the actual glass ceiling that we carry as women is a lack of awareness around how our hormones operate and how they affect every single moment of our lives.
Oh, such a good line. That's like mic drop right there. So let's talk biohacking your business. I love that term, as I hear it all the time with health, but I'm like, ooh, never thought about it in the business perspective. So when women come to you and they're like, okay, I want to start up leveling in my business, and you want to teach them how to do this from a holistic way, what are some of the things you do to help them biohack their business?
Yeah. So essentially, it's important to know what is biohacking. So biohacking is a set of routines and habits that you cultivate based on how your body operates in conjunction with how your business operates, so that you can cultivate what I call feminine synergy, which often, to what you speak to, is as a beautiful flow between the masculine and the feminine. But it's also looking at things like your sleep patterns and your eating patterns and all these different facets. So I usually have gals come in and audit themselves, right? We take that audit of, where are you feeling these holes, these tangents, these hardships within your days, within your life. And typically it's not a matter of, did I get enough done on my to-do list? It's, girlfriend, you're getting 6 hours of sleep every single night, right? Or you're not eating the things that are nourishing your body or filling your cup, or more than anything, it's energy management, right? How are you managing the energy in versus the energy out? And again, that comes back to Are you refilling and restoring? Or are you doing, right? Which is what we're taught, unfortunately.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. So back to your story a little bit, because I want to wrap around. You were at this low and you started to teach yourself about all of this. Did you get any kind of outside help with all of that too? Or are you mostly just self-taught?
At that point, self-taught for sure. There wasn't anything out there. It's so funny. I started talking about syncing with your cycle. I would say 6 or 7 months before I actually started to see it on social media at all. And then it became like this big thing, which I love. Honestly, I love, because I think it's information that we have needed to have for so long, that we have deserved to have. So no, totally self-taught in just book after book after book after book after book that I could read. Obviously, I read all of Alyssa Vidi's books on, In the Flow and Woman Code, Do Less by Kate Northrup, all those books. But I also read some of the sciencey, like, not very fun for some people, boring books, to just really learn like what happens. For me, I'm very interested in how does it impact our brain, right? So our hormones actually begin in our brain and course through our body. So they absolutely impact what we're able to do. I mean, there are times when we have pattern recognition and there are times when we do not. And the thing here is that men, they cycle, their hormones cycle in a 24-hour period, whereas women is in a 28-day period. And the problem with that is that the entire society was built off of how men cycle. And so women wake up every day trying to do the same morning routine, trying to do the same, whatever the case may be, and feeling like, I can't do this. It's not working. It doesn't feel good. I'm whatever, which ultimately translates into a limiting belief, a story about being broken or whatever, which turns into the reasons why women don't start the business or don't go after the clients or don't speak their genuine, authentic selves on social media.
So what did you change when you learned all of this? What did you start to change on like a practical daily basis to start really working with your cycle?
Yeah. Number one is tracking your cycle, obviously getting to know your body and how your body operates. But number two is to get really, really specific in each phase and understanding how, again, the tracking is elongated in the sense that I would have people actually write down, how are you feeling in each one of these phases? There is so much permission to be had in understanding how your body operates, even relationally. I know you talk a lot about relationships here. And my marriage transformed when my husband knew when there was times when I could get wet and times when I biologically could not, right? So that he wasn't in his head believing that something was wrong with him. I just did that thing to you last week and you loved it. And this week it's not working. It's not that it's not working. My body biologically does not do that this week. Correct. And so either one of us are in our head. So really it's an understanding. It's an awareness of what do these phases mean? And it's something, to be honest with you, my like big, scary, audacious dream is to create a nonprofit to go into school systems and teach this to young girls and to create something that sweeps across the nation so that teachers are teaching different and schools are doing different. Young girls are getting homework assignments in their luteal phase, feeling like they're stupid and they can't do math, when that's not the case, right? It's not the case. Their brain literally just can't operate under that lens of adapting and adopting something new. That's important information.
And it's so interesting. You talked about like what's wrong with me and these girls thinking like I'm stupid at math and the lie of like I'm broken. Mm-hmm. So when I've talked about that story for myself before, it was when we went through our story and I thought I was the only one and I was on the couch. And the reason it was so hard was because I thought I was the only one. And I would submit to you that the biggest lie that women have been sold is that they are the only one and there is something wrong with them, instead of recognizing this is how you're wired, this is how you're made, and you are made to do this.
Yes, flow.
You're made to go up and down and sideways. You are not meant to be this steady Eddie, and there's so much pressure to be this steady person, especially when you have a business.
Yeah.
Like you better show up, excited and peppy every single day. So how do you, with your business, honor those ebbs and flows and still show up for your business?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I give myself permission to show up for my business the way that feels best for me, because ultimately the business of me is my business. And I think that's true no matter what kind of business you operate, because at the end of the day, what really matters is how you show up for you. Right. And so essentially I follow a guideline of masculine energy via ovulation and follicular phases. So we've got our 4 phases, right? So during ovulation and follicular, I harness that masculine energy because the estrogen coursing through my body actually creates more of the ability to have more energy, more of the ability to communicate better, more of the ability to take on new things. Follicular phase is a beautiful time for our body and our brain to actually start new projects, right? So my calendar tells you exactly what phase I'm in, and I say yes or no to things based on that calendar. If you would have asked me to do this podcast last week, it would have been a no. The reason why I said yes now is because I'm follicular and I know that I could handle it. I wouldn't look at my calendar and think, what was I thinking? I don't want to do this. I don't feel right about it, right? So I would say goal number 1 is to create a calendar that you love, right? And that is by honoring your phases. So masculine is during that ovulation and follicular phase, and feminine is during menstrual and luteal. Now, there are times when I can pull out the masculine in my feminine, and I can pull out the feminine in my masculine, but it takes consciousness and intentionality, right? So I always tell women, like, think of it like this. We've got this cup. So imagine we've got a cup. And when you wake up in menstrual phase, that cup is only a little bit full. And we have to be really intentional about filling it up before we give out. When we wake up in our follicular phase, it's about half full. When we wake up in ovulation, it's almost entirely full. And the beauty of that is we can give, and still give more. But if we try to do that, if we try to give during menstrual, we will end up burnt out. We will end up exhausted. We will end up unable to give anything else. And ultimately, that doesn't just impact that moment, that tags along, right? Because not just in how you feel energetically, but when you impact your hormones. And let's be honest here, an overabsorption of masculine energy is actually the first thing that impacts your hormones. And ladies, I'm talking about like your menopause and your fertility and all the things that you're going to face. They are impacted by whether or not you have a good flow between masculine and feminine energy.
Let's talk about menopause. So for women listening in that are like, okay, this is great, but I don't have a cycle anymore. How does it work for them?
Yes. So I encourage syncing with the moon. So moon cycling. Now, the guide to this is, no, it's not as amazing as it is to sync with your own period and to know when you are bleeding. But the truth of the matter is your body as a female, no matter what stage of life you're in, whether you're nursing or you're menopausal or you're pregnant or whatever, right? No matter what stage of life you're in, your body still needs a rhythm. It still needs a flow. And so when we sync ourselves with the moon, which again, I can get into all the science of this, but it's just a beautiful representation of the feminine flow in the way that the actual moon goes. So full moon is ovulation and new moon is menstrual, et cetera, et cetera. And so if we use that as our guidepost, so literally using that calendar as our calendar for masculine and feminine energy, we are training our body to know that we trust and flow and that we're in control, right? So we're not going straight masculine or straight feminine. We're finding that ebb and flow. And oftentimes I find that women, the masculine and feminine, the feminine synergy, as I call it, can be complicated because they're like, I don't know when to do what. The thing is, we have a blueprint. We have a blueprint. And if you don't personally have a blueprint, the universe has provided one for you.
So as far as your calendar goes, because I love that. I love that you have it so clearly marked off. Mm-hmm. Do you also, because I have read in the flow, mm-hmm. line up specific activities depending on the phase too? And if so, can you give us an example?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do this for almost everything in my life. The food that I eat, the movement that I partake in physically, my sex life, my relationship, my business. I definitely use it for my business most because I'll be honest, I'm an Enneagram 3 and achievement has been my drug since birth. And so in order to make sure that I am managing myself well and being mindful of not getting into hustle mode, I use this to incorporate that masculine and feminine flow within my business. And so, for instance, I always like to look at it through the lens of content creation, right? So when we look at content, if you're creating content as a business owner, different phases create different abilities. During our menstrual phase, our left and right brain hemisphere are 25% more connected. We have a greater capacity for brainstorming, coming up with new ideas, doing fun stuff like that. So this is the time when I brain dump for social media content. That week is my brain dump. Caveat here, I'm not writing the actual content because that's not the right phase for this. This is just the idea phase. It's the reflective phase. It's the phase where we allow ourselves and our brain to do what it does best, which is come up with ideas. Now, follicular phase, on the other hand, is a good time to tackle the new, to do something that might be a little bit more challenging, i.e. actually write the content. Right? So I will sit behind the screen. I will create that batching of writing the content, allowing that creative energy to flow, knowing that I'm not going to stare at a cursor, feeling like, what is wrong with me? I can't get anything to come out of my brain, right? Although I would feel that during menstrual, mind you. Okay. Then we go to ovulation, which in our brain, we have the greatest verbal skills because we have the biggest hit of testosterone. So during this time, I can communicate the best, i.e. I'm recording, I'm creating reels, I'm doing live videos, I'm saying yes, yes, yes to podcasts and guest coaching and all the things. I'm harnessing the verbal skills I have as a woman during that time. And then finally, we go to luteal phase. And during luteal phase, we have this enhanced beauty of pattern recognition, essentially. So we have a greater capacity for editing, for research and development, for overlooking statistics. So this is a time when I might go back to content I've written, make sure it all makes sense, edit any typos. It's also a time when I will go into social media and look at the stats of what's worked, what hasn't worked, do some of that research, market research that makes sense, right? So just in the realm of content, that's how I would do it. So I teach women how to identify their zones of genius within business and then take their cyclical blueprint and build out a blueprint for that particular zone of genius. So they know when to do what during what time.
I love that. As a coach, do you only coach during your ovulation phase?
No. One day maybe my life will be like that, but no, I love coaching. And so again, I tell people, like, there's a lot of women I work with who they might not have the freedom and flexibility that I have in my schedule. I'm very blessed at this point in my business where I've been able to really create pretty much my entire schedule, albeit when my kids are actually at school and not stuck at home, right? But that being said, I know during menstrual and luteal phase that I'm going to need bigger gaps between my coaching calls. So you might see my schedule during follicular and ovulation has some back-to-back calls because I've got it, girl. I've got all the energy I need to do that. But during menstrual and luteal, you'll see actual periods where I say like 1 hour refill or 1 hour restoration, or I have massages scheduled during my luteal phase every single month. So I do strategic things to ensure, remember, how empty was that cup when you started? And what are you doing to fill it up? So I know during luteal, my energy management has to be really on point because I started really low, meaning my entire day has to be focused around how am I refilling.
So let's talk about seasons, because you talk about women and giving themselves seasons and their cycle going in seasons, but also business going in seasons. And I love talking about this topic because when you look on Instagram, you see everybody constantly in summer. Like it doesn't matter where they live, what they do. The vibe is it's summer all the time. We're always happy. There's always big things happening. There's always success coming through. And like, if you're not, what's wrong with you? Mm-hmm. And in reality, people are having seasons, but it's so easy to tune in online and go, again, what's wrong with me, right? So how do we as women give ourselves more permission to even have seasons, as far as like, not every month has to have a launch, like not every month has to have harvest. And how do you work with your clients with that?
Yeah. So I think this circles back around to the business of you and being really intentional with what you allow into your brain, into your life. So listening to podcasts like this and focusing on surrounding yourself with women who are having this conversation, right? Like I just returned to social media after a pretty big break, which I take every quarter in order to recover and restore my creative energy, right? So when I say the business of you, I mean every single component. We have to be aware enough to know, I love this person, but I'm getting triggered by her, right? There's a mute button for that. It doesn't mean you have to defriend anybody, but you have to be really conscious and cognizant of what is impacting you, what is creating stories in your life and limiting beliefs that are ultimately reflecting into your reality. So the key here, again, it is to trust your intuition. So a lot of times with my clients, what we do is we have deep conversations rooted around how do you understand how your intuition operates? And then how can you clarify when those voices come through? So some people hear intuition auditory, some people hear intuition from their gut, some people hear intuition as more of a sensory feeling, right? So we have to understand where it comes from so we can get more in tune and in touch with our body to know when my body screams at me, it is time to take a break. I listen. When my body screams at me, this launch that was planned, it no longer feels good. I listen. And the truth is, the more that I tap into my intuitive nature and cultivate that feminine synergy, the more money I make, the more fun I have, the bigger my business gets, the more present I am with my kiddos, right? It's not an easy thing, but I think it comes back to who are you surrounding yourself with that's encouraging this? And who are you surrounding yourself with that's encouraging you to be someone that you're not?
Which you just dove into. You're making more money operating in your feminine as a woman. I love this topic, and people always want to know, like, but how? How do you make more money if you are feminine and you're not doing all the time? Would you please expand on that?
Yes, absolutely. Genuinely. So one of my favorite affirmations, and I remember a client shared this with me a long time ago, was the more fun I have, the more money I make. And at the end of the day, when I come back to, we cultivate our own reality through the beliefs that we carry, I mean that from every essence of my body, right? Because again, let's get a little scientific here from a therapist point of view. If I were to say to you, the more I work, the more money I make, which was most certainly a belief that I carried for a very, very long time. What my brain does is finds proof of that constantly. Now, this is not a sabotaging type of thing. It's actually just how our body operates to say, how our brain operates to say, oh, okay, so this is the truth. I'm going to protect you. I'm going to make sure you stay on the right path. So if I'm believing subconsciously, the more I work, the more I'll make, the more I work, the more I'll make, my brain sees, oh, you just made money because you did all these things. Okay, fact, I've got that. We got that. Every single thing that we see, that person works all the time. They have so much money. That is my proof. What happens is we start to fulfill that prophecy, right? We start to work more. And the truth of the matter is, in order to have the more that you're wanting, it actually starts in your brain. It starts with the beliefs that you're carrying, changing those to what is actually true. It's not a matter of like you and I work harder or work less or whatever. It's that we have a fundamental belief that our brain is creating a reality around that is allowing the energetic, essentially we're matching the energy of our goals. So when you think of it like this, if my goal is $100,000 in the first half of the year, this is what my hand's up high. So my hand is up high. This is where I have my energy at, but I'm down here lower, believing that the more I work, the more I'll make. I am not a match for this goal.
Correct.
I'm a match for this goal down here, which is not $100,000. In order to be a match for $100,000, I have to raise myself. I have to raise my vibration. I have to raise my belief systems. I have to raise my energy management, i.e., taking better care of myself in order to be an energetic match for the $100,000 in the first half of the year.
So how do you start taking better care of yourself to be that match?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. By understanding your cycle, by understanding your hormones, by choosing to honor the way that your body operates as opposed to going against it. So feminine energy during your menstrual cycle and during luteal, being a little bit more pulled back, knowing that you don't have to work as hard, trusting a little bit more into your gut and your intuition, right? And having the due times. The thing is, the reason why, so my podcast is coming out, it's called Shamelessly Ambitious, is because on the same note that I want to call women to less work and more play and more intentionality, I also want to reduce the shame of the women like myself who are ambitious and like to work.
Yeah.
You can have both.
Correct.
You can be ambitious and you can be in flow.
Oh, yes. And I have women that will say to me, like, I want to build a business. I want the goals, but then I feel like I'm supposed to be feminine. And so then it's like they get stuck there and then they don't do anything and then they don't like how that feels. Right. And so it's constantly showing them it's not wrong to be masculine. It's not wrong to use masculine mode and it's not wrong to do things.
No. And there's strategy behind it too. You know, I have a client today I was talking to, is just like, I just feel all the overwhelm. I have so many things to do. I have so much I want to get done. She has 4 kids. You know, I'm like, I 100% validate that. I'm here to hear that. And also, your body is calling you. Your body is saying, I am empty. I am empty. I am empty. I am empty. And so everything she was doing was very half. So she never actually felt like she was checking a full box, doing a full thing, actually doing what she wanted to do, or calling in the things she wanted to call in, right? Because it was coming from a poor source. And so our call today was about so I actually cultivated for her, we created a power hour of the 3 most important things she needed to get done. And then we scheduled 4 hours of restoration. Now, we did the power hour because I 100% validate that sometimes it's like, I can't do nothing. I've got a million freaking children. I've got lunches to make. I've got laundry to do. I've got a business to run. I get you. I get it. Like, I 100% get it. The key here is, are you holding the right balls that you're juggling?
Yep.
Right? Are you trying to hold them all, which is logistically unrealistic, right? So if we come back to what really matters and focus on, let me get these priorities done, but then let me schedule energy management. Let me look at myself and really pour from a full cup so that I can do things fully, right? That's also, it's a matter of how many things do women do that they don't need to be doing? I mean, let's just get into it, right? Like, how much is on that list, sister, that you don't need to have on that list, or that you could delegate out or just completely cross off?
Correct. No, I 100% agree with that. One quick thing that I want to touch on. How do we as moms, we've got kids 24/7 and we're building businesses, schedule in 3-4 hours of energy time, right? I would love to hear your tips for that.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, I do live in a life right now where my kids are in school, so I don't have full time, but I did have a full-time nanny before this. So I will say, from a space where I'm in right now, I worked really hard to get to a place where I could outsource a lot of childcare. But before that, yeah, you have to get strategic. You have to be willing to ask for help. Sometimes you have the financial means to outsource childcare, and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you have to trade with a friend. Sometimes you have to find little energy cups here and there. And I get that that can be challenging. And sometimes it's not a 3-4 hour thing. Sometimes it's a 30-minute thing that you pour into yourself that takes a little bit more strategy and intentionality. I think that's where it comes back to the business of you and the personalization. I don't think anybody can fit into any one box, which is why, the first way that people work with me is through building their cyclical blueprint. My blueprint won't work for you. Your blueprint won't work for them. You have to build your own blueprint in order to understand how to work for yourself in order to show up for everybody else.
Love it. Last question before we wrap up. So if you could revisit that former you who was in her rock bottom moment and who really felt like something's wrong with me, what would you say to her?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm so grateful for that moment because it obviously brought me to where we are. And I think we can all say that about those rock bottoms, right? But really, this poor woman, I just picture her, gosh, I was 7 months pregnant with my third. I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. I had, maybe 10 hours a week of childcare support. I would honestly just squeeze her. I would squeeze her and let her know that she is loved and she is seen and she is cared for and she is not alone and certainly not broken, exactly where she ought to be and on the brink of the greatest discovery of her life.
Ooh, on the brink of the greatest discovery of her life. Love that. So for anyone out there who is in their pits, you are on the brink. I promise, because that's the truth.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your time and your wisdom with us. This is so intriguing to me. I just love it. And now I'm inspired to go change my calendar all over the place.
I love it.
Where they can find you and how they can work with you.
Yes, absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram, Ash McDonald. I'm sometimes there and sometimes I'm not, but I usually leave some sort of post to let people know when I'm taking a break myself. So I hope, if anything, I encourage you to love yourself very, very well. You can work with me in several different ways, but the first and most important way that most people work with me is through my course that's called the Flow Lab. And this is a step-by-step cycle syncing guide where I actually teach you how to build your own cyclical blueprint, the ins and outs of your hormones, every single phase, how to harness them for your business, for your life, for your marriage, for all the things. This is sort of my open door. This is how you get to work with me in the other capacities. I have a group coaching program and a mastermind where we go on international retreats together. But really, in order to work with me, you need to know your cyclical blueprint, because that's pretty much the language I speak.
I love it. All right, everybody, remember, if you love this episode, take a screenshot. You can tag both of us on social media. Tell us what you loved about it, or just give us some feedback, because it's the only way we get to hear from you guys, and we get a little bit of love back our way. All right, go have a beautiful day.